This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Loki Season 2, Episode 3, 1893.
Each night we played chess and talked.
A loyal friend.
More than friends. The war, the TVA, the eons after. I alone was by your side. But there was one whim you never allowed me. Why didn't you allow me a real body?
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to Defenders on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Loki Season 2, Episode 3, 1893. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John. Welcome.
Absolutely. My turn for an announcement. Happy birthday, John.
I know,
it's our week of birthdays.
it certainly is. Yeah. Yes, we have been celebrating Derek's, hence why we are doing a bit of a Victor Timely on this episode, where we're recording late, and no doubt we might be recording a little late next week as well for episode 4 of Loki, because we'll be celebrating my birthday.
Absolutely.
Woo!
Absolutely. A year younger than me.
Absolutely.
And as it stands right now when we record, you're 2 years younger than me, John.
Great.
Yeah, but we are looking forward to celebrating your birthday as well. We had a good time celebrating mine last weekend. So we like to separate them, not celebrate them together, because that would be weird. We like the enjoyment of spreading them out over the course of this month.
Yes, and mine hits the bank holiday weekend.
Absolutely.
So we have a 3-day weekend where we can also recover from the festivities.
Absolutely, yeah.
Before we start off on work.
And then we get to celebrate our engagement on the 31st of October.
Exactly.
From many years ago.
We are Halloween-centric here
Yes, we
on
are.
the Defenders podcast.
Exactly. But thanks so much for joining us for this season. Hope you've been enjoying Loki so far. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to it over at tvpodcastindustries.com. Or if you'd like to send some feedback into us for any of the Loki episodes, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Or you can join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/TV Podcast Industries. Get your thoughts in there. We have some spoiler posts up for each of the shows we're covering. Right now we're covering Gen V, which we have 2 more episodes left of.
Certainly do.
Much more adult show than Loki.
Yes, much more innuendo-laden as well than Loki.
Definitely, especially on our podcast.
Certainly
since
is.
It's, as normal, a PG podcast for a very adult show. So we had a lot of fun trying to get around some of the descriptions of things we can't describe, or else we get banned from Apple Podcasts. So that's always fun on our Gen V podcast.
Yes, walking the tightrope, fellow Defenders, walking the tightrope.
Exactly. And we also will have a very violent return of a TV show coming next week from the 3rd of November. Invincible Season 2 returns from Robert Kirkman, a very, very violent superhero show as well. So it lines up quite well with Gen V, not so much with Loki, though.
Well, it will also just be a few weeks of 3 podcasts again.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. There's only 4 episodes of Invincible. And John, the good news is, just like Season 1, you're not on Invincible. You don't have to be on the episodes.
True.
So that's just myself and Chris for the Invincible podcast.
And relax.
You're welcome to join, though.
I might just say hello, yes, and then leave you 2 capable fellows whilst I watch it on my own.
Well, we could consider you the newbie for Season 2, John. I'm happy to have you on board as always.
I probably will join for the odd one.
Good
sure.
stuff. And hopefully our fellow Defenders and all of our listeners will join us for Invincible. Only 4 episodes coming out for that this year, so not very many to watch, but a really enjoyable watch as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Let's get into our discussion about Loki Season 2, Episode 3. Of course, the show was created for TV by Michael Waldron. The director for this episode is Kasra Farahani. This is his first big directing role, especially for Marvel, but he is one of the production designers for every episode of Loki, so he is the writer and director for this episode.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. Previously, Kasra worked in the art department for Black Panther and as an art director for Thor, Captain Marvel, Star Trek Into Darkness, so loads and loads of high high level production design and art design for many movies. Yeah,
interesting pathway.
Absolutely,
yeah, good stuff.
The writers for the episode, Eric Martin, once again, as has been the writer for every episode so far this season, along with Kazra Farahani and his writing partner Jason O'Leary, who previously worked with Kazra on the horror movie Tilt back in 2017, which I haven't seen.
No, not seen either.
But interesting, the two of them worked together back in 2017, and now here they are working on Loki for Marvel.
Good stuff. Partnerships are cool.
Absolutely. Just like ours, John. Just like ours. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Loki Season 2, Episode 3, 1893?
Sure. 86 years B.MCD, before McDonald's. In the year 1868, Ravona Renslayer arrives in Chicago looking for Miss Minutes. Ravona is instructed to deliver a package into a window to complete He Who Remains' plan to safeguard the timeline. Inside, a young boy opens the package and reveals the TVA handbook. Trying to locate Renslayer, Loki and Mobius travel to 1868, but unable to locate her, they travel to a new branch timeline in 1893. The new branch was created by Miss Minutes' interference in 1868. They quickly locate a confidence trickster called Victor Timely, who is advertising a way to harness time through his Temporal Loom prototype. Victor sells his fake invention scam to an investor named Robber Baron, but soon has 4 interested parties after him. Loki and Mobius need his aura to fix the loom, while Renslayer and Miss Minutes want him to take his variant's place with them at his side. Also, Sylvie arrives to kill him to prevent his rise to power, but is thwarted by Loki. And of course, Robber Baron wants his money back. Victor manages to escape most of his suitors as he takes a boat to his Wisconsin laboratory with Miss Minutes and Renslayer. But Renslayer is sent overboard in a lifeboat on the advice of Miss Minutes after she looks for a partnership with Victor. But Miss Minutes fares little better after she professes romantic love for him and is deactivated by Victor using a tempad. Victor is not alone for long as Renslayer, Loki, Mobius and Sylvie arrive at his laboratory. Sylvie gains control of the situation, threatening Victor with her blade, but it ultimately allows Loki to take Victor back to the TVA, then sends Renslayer to the Citadel at the end of time. Looking upon He Who Remains' corpse, Renslayer activates Miss Minutes, who divulges that she knows a secret about Renslayer that He Who Remains has been keeping from her for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Or a very short time. We don't really know.
Or a very medium time.
Time works really differently in this show. We're not really too sure how long everybody's been in existence even. So good stuff. But a cliffhanger of the greatest level for next week's episode as Renslayer on one end of time and Victor Timely out of time and everybody else left behind in 1893.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So good stuff. We will talk about it in our variants for the episode. We're talking about our top 5 variants, top 5 moments. One that sits outside of the top 5 moments, though, John. Just wanted to kick off by saying I absolutely love the old-timey Marvel Studios theme that we get at the beginning here.
Really good.
It took me a second to realize it is just an old-timey version of it. It's the same theme that we hear at the start of all of the Marvel shows. It took me a second just to catch what it was, but once it kicks in, I was going, "Oh, I hope they use this again."
Yeah, it's that kind of saloon music, isn't it? From sort of westerns, I guess, early westerns that you would see on black and white film. Certainly, my experience, but coming from that period. Yeah. So I really like that. I even like the music during the chase as well. As Victor Timely is being chased by Loki and Mobius, but also Robber Baron and his cronies. And it just felt like, a Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin or Laurel and Hardy type of sort of music going on. I just needed the image to be a bit more stilted and a bit more sort of overacted like they had to do in order to kind of capture the mood of it. So I kind of really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was quite fun. And also this old-timey version of the theme kind of reminds me of what they used to do in Westworld, where they get popular songs like Radiohead songs and they translate them for that kind of Western era music as well. So had a little reminder of that for me too.
Yeah, and there was also a moment where I was getting vibes of Wallace and Gromit, Long Trousers as well.
Yeah.
Not just with another dud invention by Victor Timely, but also some of the music. It felt a bit like... well, again, it was a bit like the chase between Wallace and Gromit and Feathers McGraw.
Oh, very good.
On the train tracks again. But again, that's riffing off that kind of saloon style music.
Absolutely.
So I really enjoyed that.
But I am certain that invention was a reference to Wallace and Gromit.
Definitely.
Without a doubt.
The wrong trousers, indeed.
Exactly.
For the counsellor.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's get on to variant number 1. Our variant 1 is a young Victor Timely in 1868.
Yes.
Which kind of kicks off everything that happens in the episode. I just thought it was interesting here that it calls out really specifically. This is on the sacred timeline. Miss Minutes is back here waiting for Ravona Renslayer because she can't intervene, but Renslayer can. And she's carrying out the plan of He Who Remains. If he gets killed, go back to this time in history and pass over the TVA handbook to this particular window. So this package, this window, this specific time.
Yes, and interestingly, the year stamp here on, at the start of this scene with Renslayer arriving does indicate that this is the sacred timeline. So Miss Minutes' plan from He Who Remains is to interfere with the sacred timeline in order to branch it by handing a young He Who Remains, or in this case, Victor Timely.
Well, yes, it's not a young He Who Remains.
No, he's not.
This is a new variant of Kang. Yeah.
Exactly. And to effectively secure He Who Remains variant, ultimately to replace the dead one from the end of season 1.
Exactly, to ensure the creation of the TVA and ensure that his plan is carried out in a similar way, I suppose, is kind of the way. Yeah, but I guess it has its own unique effect on the timeline, giving this kid the handbook of how the TVA was created and basically just leaving it with him to puzzle out how it works, creates Victor Timely, this character who is a confidence man. I must say I forgot that con man is short for confidence man.
Yeah.
You always think con being such a negative thing. Confidence sounds like a really positive thing, but a confidence man is a person that uses their confidence to sell shoddy stuff to you, basically. But Victor Timely has been using the handbook to start off his inventions and kickstart his mind. He's obviously very intelligent. He's working, I think, on some experiments. Yeah.
I thought he was pouring wax into candle molds.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe he's just
so he might not
making
be
some
that sort of advanced at that stage.
Yeah, but he's trying to use the kind of blueprint that he's created for himself from the TVA manual and coming up with inventions based on that. And that kind of we talk about OB being a short name for Ouroboros, which is eternal and repeating. Effectively, is the translation of the word. Effectively, so what we're seeing here is the TVA was created by Victor Timely. OB wrote the book of the handbook of the TVA, and now that handbook is being given to Victor Timely to kickstart his knowledge into the TVA. So it's all a big loop, all a big weird,
it's never ending.
Loop. Never ending. Yes.
As the serpent eats its own tail.
Exactly.
For sure. And speaking of OB, this kind of, I guess, just to touch on it, but we do have a brief moment back at the TVA where, what we hear is that either we need Miss Minutes, who has, default access to the TVA in order to prevent the temporal loop from overloading and effectively killing us all, or it is the aura of He Who Remains can deactivate it and reset it from this critical path that it's on.
Exactly, and the temporal loom needs to be reset or it needs to be expanded because there's so many branch timelines being created. I thought it was a bit odd, actually, in this episode, considering all the stuff that was talked about with the explosions killing the branching timelines, that Obi's saying all the branching timelines that had been taken off by Docs are now growing back again. So I guess those explosions didn't work.
Or they worked, but it's just new branches because He Who Remains is still dead.
Yeah.
at the end of time in the Citadel, in his seat,
Exactly.
in a crumbling Citadel, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe, again, it's just, it repeats itself because the sacred timeline isn't being pruned. Because although Docs did that, effectively everyone else has kind of stood down from doing it. And now that Docs has stopped doing it, it's happening again. So maybe it's that, or it's a regrowth back of those branches. But I'm assuming if you blew them up and destroyed them, you know, it could just be a regrowth from that stem. Like, if they didn't prune it all the way back, or however, you know, it works.
Exactly.
But certainly, it was interesting to hear, you know, the temporal loom cannot cope with the number of new branches that is needing to kind of try and weave back into a single thread.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Also, really liked the moment with Obi and Mobius, where Mobius is saying to him, we can hack it. And Obi's going, brilliant, that's excellent, that solves all of our problems. And Mobius is going, no, it was a question. So I love that Obi thinks that Mobius might have a way to solve the problems. I thought that was quite fun.
Yeah. And the other thing, just from this opening scene in Chicago, 1868, we see Miss Minutes blending in to become an old-timey-wimey clock face.
Well,
although still pretty more ghost-like, I guess.
Well, absolutely, and use that to great advantage later on. But I did find that quite funny. You stand like a sore thumb, says Renslayer to her. She turns into a black and white clock, animated clock. I think anybody in the real world seeing an animated clock walk around and talk will still say you stand out like a sore thumb.
Absolutely.
Like the actual world wasn't black and white in 1868.
No, definitely. But I have to say, I really loved Miss Minutes in this episode. Yes, shall we move on to our variant 2? A full 25 years into the future, into 1893, and the world of tomorrow. At least for 1893.
Yes.
With the World Fair.
Absolutely, this is cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
You know, and this is true to life. They have done a Nat Geo documentary to tie in with Loki, talking all about the 1893 World Fair. I almost said the 1983 World Fair, which wasn't as special as the 1893 World Fair. But it's interestingly, they were saying that it was specifically set up to showcase the power of electricity. That was the purpose of the World Fair, and used to great advantage here by Victor Timely.
Yes, and also in the real world by Edison, who is referenced here by Victor Timely in his theatrical temporal marvel that he does in the Hofbräu. Yes.
Oh, is that what's called? That's the location where he's doing his
I think it's
presentation.
replicating a German bar,
very
effectively.
Good. Very good.
Good pilsners, I guess.
I like it.
Yeah.
I was wondering why everybody's name was German on the poster outside. Did you notice there was someone called Lang on the poster there, which is a German name, but also there is a Scott Lang in the MCU, so it may have been an ancestor of Scott Lang.
Yeah. Or Bernard Langer.
No. Or Cassie Lang, maybe. We're in the MCU, John. We're trying to find connections here. Yes, but you mentioned he does reference Edison, and the whole piece of Victor Timely coming out on stage and talking about his invention and what he's trying to accomplish is he's saying that for the wattage that's used by Edison in one bulb, he could light up the entirety of Chicago. But what he wants to do is bring power to the world. And you're almost hearing in Victor Timely's voice, you know, again, brilliantly played here by Jonathan Majors. What you're actually hearing in it is, it's not that he wants to bring power to the world. It's that he wants to have power over the world. You're hearing it in his voice. There is that element of him in there, that there's an idea that he wants to be the one in charge of the power for the world, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting as well, the year stamp here at this stage, 1893, does indicate it has become a branch timeline.
That's right.
As well.
Yeah.
So yeah, really interesting with the playing around from Miss Minutes and Renslayer. But in the Hofbräu, you do have all these people watching on. You know, I love Loki's kind of reaction to seeing effectively this variant of He Who Remains there on stage. You can sense the dread here. I love the fact that, you know, the con man, you have Loki calling him a confidence trickster. You know, he can spot the trickster,
of course,
from a mile away. And I kind of liked all this the dealing, in particular with this robber baron, who wants a partnership, which Victor Timely is not for partners, but ultimately does a bidding where he gets $1,000. And I like the little scene afterwards where you see Victor Timely just slipping a note under the bowler hat in payment for the guy who started the bidding off at $500.
And accelerated the negotiations.
And accelerated it as well. So that was kind of a nice touch as well.
Absolutely. My favourite touch of that scene is afterwards when they're outside and you hear a small explosion in the background. And that's when Robert Barron comes in afterwards going, I want my money back, because it's already exploded. Again, he did say it's a prototype that they're buying. He's not there for partnership. He's not there to work with them to mass produce this. It's just a prototype, but if you want it, you can have it for $1,000, which seems to be how Victor Timely makes a lot of his money. And that's quite a lot of money that he's just made for that one item there. I presume those mechanical trousers that make you taller probably cost a pretty penny.
Yeah, and well, I guess to invest back into then his real work, which is the laboratory across the lake in Wisconsin. Yeah. I think the other thing I really liked in the bar, as Victor Timely is introducing what looks like the Temporal Loom prototype of is, you see Renslayer sort of having a few doubts, the facial expressions on Ravona, that, is this really the man that's going to be the person to become he who remains? There's doubts maybe about the plan, but certainly about Victor Timely, because, because of the fact he is a trickster, and I think she recognizes that as well. And it takes a while until she can realize or see the potential of Victor Timely in becoming he who remains.
Yeah.
I liked as well just how you get peppered through this Victor Timely saying, he's a bit hamstrung by the technology of the time as well, and I think that's really interesting, because I think, you think of Edison, or you think of, Tesla, these people with these ideas, these concepts, these big ideas that transform society, and dealing with potentially the limitations of the technology at that time. Yeah. And I just really like that kind of sort of reflection of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was also really busy taking down notes for what, Victor Timely was saying in this presentation about the temporal marvel, what he was trying to do, translate, time into power, to replace the wattage that Edison has just created. And it's only afterwards. This is the same scene that was shown at Quantumania, the post-credit scene at Quantumania. Yeah. So loads of people have been speculating about what it could mean and what Victor Timely's ultimate plan was and all that kind of stuff. It's only afterwards you realize he is really talking crap just to make money. He's playing off the idea that Edison has just created energy and has come up with an even better way that could power the entire world for a fraction of the cost. Wouldn't it be amazing? But it's crap. It's not something that he has achieved, or even his focus of his own experiments. His focus of his own experiments are something completely different.
Yeah, back in his lab that we see a prototype of again.
Yeah, because I was sitting there going, wow, this idea that he's harnessed the power of time to create energy. He hasn't at all. He's just made a nice looking machine that sparks enough, lights up a few bulbs, and made £1,000 out of it on the back of it. So well done, Victor Timely, for your confidence tricking, but also well done to Marvel for using this as your post-credit scene to allow people to speculate for 6 months about the possible plan of Victor Timely when this isn't anything to do with his plan.
Absolutely. But his presence here, the convergence of different people, means he has 4 people after him. At least 2 groups, Mobius and Loki and Renslayer and Miss Minutes in the bag, are trying to, get his attention, trying to persuade him, to sort of come along with them. You have Robber Baron trying to get his money back. Yeah. But with all this going on, Sylvie turns up. We get a quick flick back to Casey to say that, there's a warning, something's popped up on the TEM-pad 10 yards away. And it is Sylvie here trying to snuff out He Who Remains before he becomes He Who Remains. And sort of takes that mantle. Which is the mantle that Renslayer and Miss Minutes want him to have. It is not so much the mantle that Loki and Mobius want, but they need his aura for the TVA in order to try and deactivate the temporal loom.
As Mobius says, that's a later problem. We have a much bigger now problem.
Exactly. So I like this. I like the fact that it was being the face-off between Sylvie and ultimately Victor Timely with Loki in the middle is being done on the Ferris wheel. Whilst it's doing its rotation. And they've gotten on there to escape from Robber Baron. And all the while you have the conversation between Mobius and Renslayer. Mobius almost trying to build, also at least mend bridges with her, and she's not having any of it.
At least get the information out of her. They did used to work together quite closely before she tried to kill him. As he says, it's not really said in the show as to how Sylvie found where they are.
No.
We assume it's the tempad that she had. She had He Who Remains, his own tempad. So that may have had more access than any kind of tempad out there, but it's just not shown. It's weird that they ended last episode with Sylvie sitting on the car and that item in her hand, and didn't have her looking at it this episode and then jumping back into it. I know the surprise of her arriving is the fun part of it, I suppose, but Renslayer is saying to Mobius, "Oh look, you drew Sylvie here to where we are," and Mobius is going, "Well, maybe it was you and Miss Minutes that she tracked here, just like we did, effectively." So, but nobody really knows, and it's interesting that they would have shown that item last episode and not followed it up in this episode. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Sylvia's arrival. I like the fact she kind of lays it out around that they're trying to weaponize him and set him on a path to become He Who Remains, by Renslayer. And, the exasperation, in her voice, that to Loki, that now you're about to waltz him into the TVA. Who knows what he will do? And I mean, that's it. It's like, what is going to happen from this interference from both these sets? They're not going to be innocent bystanders of this. So, and I like that face-off between Loki and Sylvie. It felt more real than last week. It felt more meaningful. And, in a sense, I think she poses the question as well to Sylvie, why are you working for the TVA? Why have you become their lapdog? Since they're, their goals were so aligned by the end of season 1, but she's been out of the loop here. And so I just kind of liked that face off. It felt better. I felt it really connected to the nub of these two variants of Loki.
Absolutely. And they were aligned up until Sylvie went, "Well, I'm going to kill He Who Remains. And I will wipe out any other version of them that appears in the timeline," which is why she's here. So they do even reference that, Sylvie looking at Loki going, with the sword pointed towards Victor Timely going, "This seems very familiar," doesn't it? As Loki's defending Victor Timely, trying not to allow him to be killed. But he does succeed. Victor does get blown out the back of the Ferris wheel. Luckily not at the top of the Ferris wheel, at the bottom of the Ferris wheel, just as it comes back round. And Miss Minutes causes a distraction, allowing Renslayer to get Victor away to safety.
Yes.
I think that's it for the Temporal Marvels part of it, the World's Fair that we see here. Anything else that happened at the World's Fair you want to talk about, John, at all?
Just to say that, we do see as Mobius and Loki are investigating, we do see the generic montage to the Nordic gods, which doesn't include Loki, but has Balder, who, does anyone know who Balder is? Certainly Loki thinks that people wouldn't, but that, it's a montage that sort of reduces down a whole culture to this kind of showy stand at the World Fair.
I thought it was interesting. I'm, again, reading way too much into this because Balder the Brave is a comic book character. It is based on the Norse god. I was reading into it that normally in the MCU we have had, right from Thor. We've had Thor, Odin, Loki. Those are the three people that everybody knows.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the characters in Asgard surround those three characters. Here we have Thor, Odin, Balder the Brave, not Loki. So I wonder if this brand new branched timeline doesn't have a Loki, or that Loki has not made an appearance yet. So I was wondering about that. Because there has been talk that Thor did go to Earth before. The time we saw Thor landing on Earth in his movie, the first movie, that's complicated to say, but I hope you get what I meant, that he had been on Earth before, so humans knew who the Asgardians were because of that previous visit to Earth, and they know Loki as well for the same reason. So I wonder, in this branched timeline, do we have a different set of Asgardians? Is this a different place? Yeah, so I wonder if that was a change. So I was trying to see if there was any other things that you could spot in there that shouldn't exist in the world of 1893. Obviously, the biggest thing are the inventions of Victor Timely. So
yeah, exactly.
And I'd say, to make sure that stands out, that I didn't want to put too many Easter eggs in there of different things that shouldn't exist in this world, because you're supposed to really focus on everything that Victor Timely has shouldn't exist, like his reclining chair with a refrigerator underneath.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd particularly need that, but hey, look, it keeps your beer cold underneath your recliner. That could be good.
Yeah. It feels like it's preempting sort of the Super Bowl, or I guess regular NFL Sundays.
Absolutely. Other sports are available. Good stuff. We move on to our next variant then, John.
Yes.
Variant 3, Victor's Laboratory. So yes, we just mentioned there that he does have a moment in his house where he's collecting some bits and bobs in his location around the World's Fair. But if you did notice, Loki and Mobius, when they arrived at the World's Fair, arrived exactly outside what was Victor's house. That whole area had been torn down by this stage. So he's obviously moved in the 25 years intervening.
Yeah, but I think what I really liked in this moment, as they sort of escape from the World Fair, they head back to Victor Timely's kind of like hideout in Chicago, as they go to then get the boat over to his main laboratory. I just really liked how the Victor Timely, Renslayer, and Miss Minutes sort of triangle took over here.
Yes.
I just thought it was really good that, you know, as I said, we had Renslayer having doubts about this guy. But, you know, as she is able to talk to him quietly in his kind of hideout or his base in Chicago, you know, she does begin to make that connection. But I love that it's sort of blurred out. You see how that rankles with Miss Minutes.
Well, absolutely, because what Victor says to her is, to Ravona, he says, "Oh, so you're the one that brought me the book." And Miss Minutes kind of going, hang on a second, in the same way that a postman delivers post is how Ravona Renslayer did. I brought the book. I'm carrying out your plan. She has nothing to do with it other than what I'm telling her to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But, you know, you see the sort of start of that kind of competition and one-upmanship almost between Miss Minutes and Renslayer.
Absolutely.
I don't think Renslayer is as much sort of conscious of that. Yep. She is trying to be the loyal servant to He Who Remains, trying to set him on that path. Maybe there is, but certainly I just love how that rankles with Miss Minutes, and how you just see sort of the expression on her clock face, you know, with the eyes and the mouth, you know, really gives away that, you know, she's kind of not enjoying that Victor is now putting his attention onto her. And Absolutely. This, as you say, this ramps up on the boat, as you said about, you know, when he says, whose divine hand was it? And Renslayer effectively says, it was me. And yeah, you get that scoff from Miss Minutes as she tries to, you know, sort of denigrate Renslayer's role in it. Absolutely. And I mean, in fairness, Miss Minutes is calling the shots, but ultimately the divine hand is his own. Yep. So it is just a one-upmanship happening between these two, to the point where you get that great moment where because it's getting quite intimate. You know, he gives her an origami flower. Yeah. And, you know, he's holding her hand, and then she says, I have high hopes for this partnership, which we heard previously, in the bar from Robber Baron, and he immediately pulls and distances himself away from her, and she wakes up as she's dropped in a lifeboat, and you have Miss Minutes effectively has been in Victor Timely's earhole saying, you heard what she said. She wanted to be a partner. Yeah. You don't do partnerships.
I love the little smile that creeps over Miss Minutes' face when she says partnership before she even talks to Victor. It's just going, oh, there's my way in.
I really like that. And I loved how then with Miss Minutes, as they get back to the laboratory, I absolutely loved how she became this obsessive, romantic, trying to, get him to, she's pleased that he gave her free will. But I love that moment where she says, the one whim you didn't allow me to have was to take bodily corporate form, as she just puts her face over the mannequin.
So creepy.
Absolutely love that. And I love then that as she projects forward, you've got Victor Timely, who's kind of been increasingly kind of creeped out by all of this, hitting the tempad as this lover's tiff, sort of ends with her being deactivated. Yeah. I just really enjoyed this. And I was like, I think that's what I liked about Miss Minutes from season 1, but this is kind of even just ramped up even further. So I really enjoyed it.
You're trying to work out how she became the way she became. So we get the full story here. We get that he created her to effectively play chess against, and keep himself company, while he was living out his time in the place towards the end of time, let's say, because it eventually becomes the place at the end of time. I'm sure it had a different name before that. But as Miss Minutes is talking, you hear, then you gave me AI abilities. You gave me the ability to make my own determination. You gave me the ability to create my own personality. Okay, all right, I get that. So why are you crazy, basically, is what you're asking yourself. And then it's like, and then we spent eons together, like, immeasurable amounts of time, just the two of them together, with Miss Minutes having her own personality and wanting to be the love interest for Victor Timely, and he never saw her that way. He never saw her as anything other than a possession, someone to play chess together, someone to talk to, but never as anything else. And her almost in the unrequited love phase of her life, wondering why he didn't just give her a body so the two of them could live as partners, effectively. Yeah.
But he doesn't want partnerships, and that's the thing. Yeah. Her romantic delusion is still predicated on it being a partnership, which he doesn't want. And you can see how he shies away. I mean, I wonder if that's going to get explored more in future episodes, because it's a real interesting, potentially slightly weird touch point that, this variant has. Is it something innate to all the variants of He Who Remains?
Yeah. Or is it just an ego thing that they don't want to have partnership because they want to be the ones responsible? Or I was just thinking, is it just the confidence man thing? I don't want a partner here. I don't want to work with you. You can buy the product that I'm showing you here, and then I can walk away from it because I'm just selling you a prototype. I thought it was just that.
It could be, yeah.
But Miss Minutes is stressing this thing about partnership, and that's why Ravona Renslayer is kicked off the ship, and why she's put in her box. So there's obviously more to it than that. But that's all I thought originally. He was going, well, of course he wouldn't want a partner, because then he has to work with them and explain why it's not working. But if he can't get these inventions to work, he's just saying, I don't want a partner. Buy it off me, and I'll walk away. So it'll be interesting. I wonder will they explore that again, because it does seem to be quite fundamental to the reason why everybody's pushed away from in this episode. So,
definitely. Yeah.
But also in the lab, the rest of the teams that are looking for him arrive as well. We have Ravona arriving back now with her cool new version, or a cool very, very old version of a pruning stick. Looks like it almost runs like a lawnmower. You got to rev it up.
I love how she is so angry. If this wasn't a PG podcast, I would be saying a different word here. But she is so angry. I love how she comes in and effectively goes, I'm in charge. I've been given this mission by He Who Remains, not you.
Exactly.
You're going to do exactly what I say. I love how the pruning stick as well is just sparking, and certainly once Loki and Mobius arrive, I really love the interaction of Jonathan Majors as Victor Timely sort of jumping at all the sparks here.
Yeah.
It was really, really well done. And they go, okay, yes, we probably just said to him, jump at different moments because this thing is sparking, and they put it in post. But I just like how seamless it looks. It's really good. And like, he's looking pretty petrified as well. Absolutely. So I thought this was really good. I thought that switch with Renslayer, and in some ways Justified was just great. I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really Sylvie that gets them out of this with Renslayer in charge. But Sylvie's arrival does kind of shake everything up. She allows them to take Timely to the TVA.
Yeah, interesting choice, I thought.
Yeah, it's almost like she's seen a bit more trust back in with Loki for some reason. But it's more because Renslayer's here and she can take it out on Renslayer. She says she wants to be with He Who Remains, and she basically goes, no problem. You get what you wish for, and sends him.
Be careful what you wish for. As she pushes her through one of the gateways into the Citadel at the end of time. Absolutely. With a rotting, sort of slightly mummified corpse, I guess, rather than rotting, sat on his throne.
Yeah, exactly. So
which was cool. It was a great kind of image, actually, as then a few parts of masonry fall down, as well. But yeah, interesting choice, I thought, for her to kind of spur him. I mean, in a sense, I thought that, pleading from Victor Timely was really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe just that seed of doubt, they can't all be as bad as the one I killed, and that's the thing. It's like the variance. What's the variation? Or is there that one thing, that innate thing, let's say ego, that prevents the partnership, and wants the power? Is it simply just that?
Yeah.
Is it, distilled just to that trait, that pushes him, whoever, the variant is,
Yeah. And I suppose, she has been considered that way before. Sylvie has been pruned from a timeline, or tried to be pruned from a timeline, because she is a Loki variant. So, she's experienced that decision before, and potentially he did break through. And explaining that it doesn't have to end up the way you think it does for every single variant. That kind of probably got into Sylvie's mind and made her go, well, hang on a second, I'm just doing exactly the same thing that he did if I go around killing everybody before they've become bad, I suppose, or before they've achieved what I think they're going to achieve. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So we will see Sylvie back for the rest of the season. As we mentioned last week, she's a major character, so of course she's going to appear in a lot of the episodes of the show. So that kind of back and forth in her own mind, though, that we see here.
Yeah. But I think on to our last variant 4, we have Renslayer at the end of time.
Yeah, it's just to mention it. We've already kind of mentioned the actual Citadel and what was happening there, but it's more that she's here now. She's at the Citadel at the end of time. Yeah. And Miss Minutes is with her. She has the tempad that Victor Timely used to trap Miss Minutes, so she's able to pop her back out again, effectively, and both of them are together at the end of time, looking on the body of He Who Remains.
Yeah.
And Miss Minutes just kind of says, well, that's a terrible way to treat somebody who knows all your secrets, and I know all of his secrets.
Yeah. And I know a really big secret about you. It'll make you really angry.
Yeah.
I really liked it. Miss Minutes is just kind of a pot stirrer here. She's the abandoned bride from before, because I like how when she is activated from the tempad, she's finishing the sentence that she left, and it's love.
I love you.
Yeah. And it's like, this, doesn't seem like it's going to go well or help He Who Remains here, or Victor Timely at the moment, because, she's a woman scorned, effectively.
Yeah.
Or a clock scorned. And immediately sets about trying to influence Renslayer, which we don't hear here. So I'm guessing it will immediately pop up in episode 4.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like the only interaction we've had with Renslayer and He Who Remains was that tape that Loki heard back in episode 1, wasn't it? Where it was effectively He Who Remains talking to Renslayer, saying, "You're a real marvel. Without you, I couldn't have gotten here. I'm glad to have had you by my side." And then he says, "For all time," and she responds, "Always." So we know there was a connection with Renslayer in the past, and they work together. We know this Ravona Renslayer doesn't know Victor Timely and doesn't know He Who Remains. So, or does know him. I think she's had missions with He Who Remains before, right? She worked for him in season 1, but she's the only person that had met with He Who Remains, but doesn't know about this citadel at the end of the time and him being dead there, I suppose.
No, exactly.
Because who would? Nobody else has been there other than Sylvie and Loki. So we'll see what happens there next episode.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent stuff. Any notes for the episode?
Just one or two, I think. One particular one that really stood out to me was a very famous quote is used by Victor Timely. He says, "If it can be dreamed, it can be achieved," which is a very famous quote from the Disney creator, Walt Disney. So that's what he used to say about his creations. If it can be dreamed, it can be achieved. So interesting now that Marvel is part of Disney that they're taking the quote from Walt Disney for Victor Timely.
Yeah, good stuff.
And the only other one, not really a note as such, but just we didn't mention it. I like Loki's version of a bar fight when he bumps into a very, very big man who tries to challenge him to fighting outside, and Loki uses his magic to send him outside into a cage. And Mobius just goes, "The incredible Loki, he's here every night."
Yeah,
and the crowd applauded this magic trick that Loki's done. I thought that was quite fun.
Yeah, it was really good.
Good stuff. That's it, I think, for our points and notes for the episode. John, do you defend Loki Season 2, Episode 3, 1893?
I do. I really enjoyed this episode. I'd give it 4 obsessive, romantic, sentient AI clocks out of 5.
Nice.
For me, this episode spun on Miss Minutes. I really, really enjoyed her. I loved the whole ghost thing as well, which we hadn't really touched upon.
Yeah.
Which kind of, flags to Mobius and Loki that they're on the right timeline. But I love the interaction between her, Victor Timely, and Renslayer as this kind of threesome becomes more and more tense and competitive, really. But all emanating from Miss Minutes here.
Yep.
And I just really enjoyed it, and I like how ultimately that all gets switched to Miss Minutes again, just trying to, break up the band here at the end of time with Renslayer saying, "I know something you don't, and you're not going to like it."
Absolutely. I guess Miss Minutes right now is the villain of the show, right?
I don't know whether she is the villain. She is the clock scorned. It is simply, like you say, she has spent eons and eons and eons with He Who Remains, has been party to every decision, every thought and secret that he has, whether because she's been out with him or in the Tempad, and she has effectively been told, the feelings that she has built up over that time aren't being reciprocated.
Exactly.
And I just really liked how this played out. I loved the whole 1868, 1893 elements of it as well, going from the sacred to the branch timeline with this plan from He Who Remains that he's entrusted to Miss Minutes. So, I mean, that's it. This plan has been entrusted to her, and by the end of it, she's kind of actively briefing against him, really, to one of his other close allies that we've heard from the tape recording at the TVA from episode 1 of this season. So I just really enjoyed that. I thought Loki and Sylvie's interactions were just so much better. I think there's a few moments here where, I'm like, well, why did Sylvie was it just the pleading of Victor Timely that kind of melted her heart, or whatever sort of stayed her hand?
Yeah.
Again, it's about time, isn't it? So it's those moments in time, that you hear about so often. Well, what if ultimately?
Yeah.
such and such had stayed their hand at that moment, you know? I just really enjoyed it. So for me, yeah, this is 4 obsessive, romantic, sentient AI clocks out of 5.
Very good. Very good.
Derek, do you defend episode 3 of Loki season 2?
I do defend it. It's a bit of a soft defend. I liked the episode. I've seen it 4 or 5 times now, I think. Weirdly, we just watched it a lot because we thought we were going to be recording earlier and I had to refresh myself. So I've watched it more, I think, than all the rest of the episode. I'll give a big compliment to the director and the writers in the episode. They really committed to this feeling like an episode of the show set in 1893. The setting at the World Fair was really good, but as we mentioned right at the start, the music and the running between buildings looking like something from a silent movie, those were all felt of a piece, so that it felt like they were really in 1893, committing to that side of it. I thought that was really good. Victor Timely here is very interesting. Jonathan Majors always interesting to watch on screen when he does his version of a character. There's always something interesting and captivating about his performance, I suppose. This is another very interesting, very different character. You certainly couldn't put He Who Remains side by side with Victor Timely and say they're the same person without a doubt. I liked the way that he introduced himself on stage in front of the audience in the auditorium. I thought that was really interesting to watch on screen. But overall, it felt like I wanted a little bit more movement from the episode. They had a starting point, get Victor Timely, and at the end of the episode, Victor Timely is now on his way to the TVA. So I guess it's accomplished its goal in this 3rd episode. But I just wanted a little bit more, maybe a little bit more of Obi, because he's been so much fun to watch for the last couple of episodes. A little bit more with that team back in the TVA and what they're actually doing during this whole period. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of that, but
yeah, I was kind of pleased for the break actually from that. I was pleased to have Renslayer and Miss Minutes back.
Definitely, yes.
And I think that's maybe the difference. I think with all the temporal looms and there's always the issue of overcomplicating it.
Yes,
I think
you're right. Yeah,
and I just was happy to have this episode away from the TVA, something different. It felt like it progressed it because it was out of the TVA.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. I think I probably just don't know what I wanted, but this probably wasn't it. That's probably more what I'm saying. I'm not sure if Loki season 2 is for me at the moment.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't been super blown away by episodes of Loki each week. Last week I went on a rant as to why I really disliked it. This week I didn't dislike it as much as that. There were some really good things about it, but I'm kind of at least tentatively looking forward to episode 4. Like if this week had been a commercial for Dodge Jeep,
or General Electric,
if it had been a commercial this week, I would have been very much not looking forward to episode 4, but I'm looking forward to episode 4 because we have more of these characters to come. So yeah, happy enough. Defend it, but still on the lower end so far for me for Loki season 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Let's pop on over to hear what our wonderful fellow defenders had to say. First up, we have some feedback on email from Victor Timely Von Doom, who says, "Greetings, fellow variants. This episode was well worth the wait. I enjoyed the ragtime Marvel banner opening and themes throughout. Scott Joplin would be proud. The Chicago World Fair scenes were great. I got the Balder reference. His limited comic series was very good, but why introduce him here? I was amused to find Victor Timely a flim-flam scientist. I should change my moniker. Loki sussed him out quick enough, though. Jonathan Majors nailed another role. I can't get enough of Sylvie and Loki using their magical powers. I never figured Miss Minutes for the jealous type. She and Ravona commiserating can't be good for any of our heroes, especially if she gets the body she craves. Can you spell ULT or ON? Looking forward to TVPI podcast feedback and episode 4, Excelsior, Victor Timely Von Doom." Ah, yes, Victor. AI getting a body that they crave, just like Ultron from Age of Ultron. Yeah, that didn't go very well for the Avengers when they were around.
No, it certainly didn't.
No, it didn't. It didn't. Yeah, I do love seeing Sylvie and Loki using their magical powers. Then that is great fun to see it because we got so little of that last season while they were trapped in the TVA.
And I think, Victor, I don't think you need to change your moniker. I think he came across as a flim-flam scientist because it was prototypes with not the right technology in place, and he was trying to get the money to invest in his real prototype, which we see him picking up from his laboratory.
Yes.
So I think he was a confidence trickster in that moment, but it is for a higher purpose.
True.
And I think that comes out a bit when he's got Sylvie's blade to his throat, to some extent.
Yeah.
Or at least that side of him. So, I think the moniker's still good to go there, Victor.
Yes, he has created something that could save everybody in the next episode of the TVA.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Victor Timely Von Doom.
Thanks, Victor.
Our second email comes in from Coffee and Vodka, who says, "Greetings, fellow sepia-searching defenders. Not a lot of time having a wedding to go to, but not a lot to say. This was very much a partial step episode, with the only real in-segment resolution being Sylvie's character development towards Mercy. Otherwise, a technically competent and competently written hour-long exercise in foreshadowing and run-up to the next episode. 3.5 strong-worded clocks, on-the-nose nom de plumes, and rotting remains out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka."
Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. See, I think that's about what I wanted to say. I'm around the same kind of level as you there, Coffee and Vodka. Not that I'm not looking forward to the next episode. This was fine. This was good. There was great production design and great writing. Yep, I agree with you there. Hope you had a good time at the wedding.
Yeah, thank you so much, Coffee and Vodka. Yeah, hope you had a great time at the wedding.
Absolutely. Over on Facebook, our first piece of feedback comes in from Heather Wallace, who says, "Oh, that old-timey piano version of the Marvel theme was so good. This episode was better and more coherent than last week's, although Sylvie's mullet is still distracting and infuriating me. Miss Minutes is a complete psycho. That tiny little uplift smile when Renslayer said partners was creepy. And she used the biggest insult Southern Belles dish out. Bless your heart." Now that we've seen the end credits scene from Quantumania in this episode, I hope I never have to think about the film again. And finally, I so enjoyed Derek's rant about that place with golden arches last week. I don't even want to mention the name again.
Excellent stuff, Heather. Yes, I do know what you mean about Quantumania. It was such a shame, and luckily we have moved on, though, as well, from ranty Derek with the golden arches to kind of slightly optimistic but generally underwhelmed Derek. So I guess Kentucky Fried Chicken, Derek. Apart from the skin, I guess. Yeah. He's eating the skin of this episode, kind of looked really good, and then it was just chicken.
There you go.
Yeah. And
I actually do want to see Quantumania again, because I remember being once again very impressed with Jonathan Major's performance in there.
Yeah, he was.
I don't want that lost time.
Yeah, he was really good, Jonathan Majors, for sure. And like you, I love the old-timey piano version of the theme, and I loved the music all the way throughout. I think some of it I think there was as I say, the reference to Wallace and Gromit with those trousers, and also just some of those old black and white chase scenes as well. Really good. Totally with you on Miss Minutes. She is a complete psycho.
Yes, she is.
But so good. I thought she was great in this. Thanks so much, Heather. Also on Facebook, David, Mr. Writer, says, "What else can one say other than Jonathan Majors is a superstar? Carries the whole episode. Incredible performance from him throughout. Sealed the deal on his last scene with Sylvie. Wow. Speaking of Sylvie, was I the only one annoyed with Sylvie this episode? More this season, to be honest. This episode has been the best so far. I'm sure Derek's happy about the lack of McDonald's. Also, Miss Minutes, what a little psycho." Absolutely, David. But it's weird. I really obviously like little psycho clocks then.
Oh, she's perfect though.
She was absolutely perfect.
Miss Minutes is great in the episode. I know what you mean about the show, the episode hanging on her this week, because she has so much in the background going on. But I think everybody was pretty good in this episode. But I think because we haven't seen Miss Minutes up front since last season, really. It's great to see her back, and she does really feel central to this episode. She's pushing everything along from the background. So yeah, once again, great little psycho watch or clock.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, Mr. Writer.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. We also got some feedback in from Praline Prelim Martha, who says, I absolutely loved this episode. Jonathan Majors totally won me over. I'm excited to see what happens next. The stage design, the costumes, the music, it was visually stunning. My favourite scene was Miss Minutes creepily putting her face on that dummy. Ooh.
Totally with you.
Absolutely. Can't wait for the next episode. Yeah, that is just so weird looking, as she even just fits the mannequin perfectly in the face as well. So creepy.
Great stuff. Yeah, thank you so much. Joe Herbers says, not sure what I thought of this episode. The timely performance was mostly distracting. Was hoping for more Loki-Sylvie interactions than Miss Minutes Renslayer interactions. Not loving Sylvie's development so far this season. The season is half over, so not really a lot of time after this excursion in the past. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, so far has been maybe a little slow on the pacing. But I have to say, I kind of really enjoyed sort of being taken out of the TVA, as I said, and with that sort of, trinity of Miss Minutes, Renslayer, and Victor Timely. So it felt fresh so far, to be honest, and it was good to get the performance of Jonathan Majors. So yeah, overall, I actually really enjoyed this episode.
I think the show so far, these 3 episodes, have felt like a lot of style.
Yes,
very much a lot of style. And as for Sylvie, really, we haven't had a huge amount of time of her on screen yet. So,
no.
There was a big change this episode, her being merciful towards Victor Timely. That was quite a huge thing. Last episode, her coming in and helping out the TVA and then walking away from them was a massive moment, as well, but not a huge amount of screen time. It has been much more of Loki and Mobius, in the TVA in the first 2 episodes, setting things up, and then the introduction here of Victor Timely in the second episode. So potentially there's more of her to come in the next 3 episodes. While we are halfway through, we're also halfway through. There's still the other 3 episodes to
well,
come.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yes. How very philosophical.
It wasn't meant to be philosophical. It was meant to be timely, John. Timely. Thanks so much, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Dr. Bob Phillips says, I'd forgotten all about the excitement that World Fairs generated in the days before the internet, sci-fi, and votes for anyone who wasn't a rich white man.
Absolutely.
Superb to set a spectacular He Who Remains variant, barnuming about the place, chased by a murderous Loki, saved by a desperate one, and aided perhaps by Miss Machiavelli? All that was missing was a nice burger, fries, and a milkshake. Smiley face. I don't agree, Dr. Bob. We were, what did we say, 65 years, 85 years before the creation of those Golden Arches. So I'm glad. They had some
popcorn that tasted like ash.
Yes.
According to Loki.
Yeah, they called it something else. They called it crack or something.
Yeah,
I didn't catch what that was.
Probably crackledy seeds or something.
Yeah.
That's what popcorn used to be called. Ye olde crackledy seeds.
I guess some of our US listeners might be able to tell us what that is. Maybe it makes sense. But I didn't know what it was. But no burgers at all this episode. Good stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob. And thank you to all our fellow defenders for sending in your thoughts on this episode of Loki. Remember, we love to hear your thoughts, observations, comments, and feedback on all the episodes of Loki that we cover and the shows that we cover, of course. So, great stuff to get your feedback in.
Absolutely. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. I did get an email in wondering why we're not doing a Loki pub quiz, John.
Yeah.
Because we did one for season 1. We decided, since we have 4 open pub quizzes at the moment, that we haven't gotten round to closing and rewarding our wonderful fellow defenders with some goodies from those shows, that we'd hold off on a pub quiz until we'd at least close those 4 off. If you want to enter those, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your correct answers to each of them. Email us there. If you want to know the questions, pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, and there is a pub quiz button up at the top, which gives you the questions for the 4 open quizzes, which are for Star Wars Ahsoka, Secret Invasion, Marvel's last TV show on Disney Plus, for The Wheel of Time, which is also finished up on Prime Video, and the one that's currently ongoing for Gen V, the boys spin-off, over on Prime Video at the moment as well. A couple more weeks of that one to go. Once that's finished, then we'll wrap all 4 of those up in one show, and it'll be a big spectacular giveaway of goodies from each of those 4 shows.
Yes. And of course, just one final announcement, fellow Defenders. Please share and subscribe to the podcast, because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the old timely, wimely love.
It is. And speaking of sharing the love, happy birthday again, John.
Why, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll speak to you again next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow Defenders, for joining us for this episode of Loki. We will be back with, of course, Loki episode 4. But in the meantime, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending for all time, always.
Bye.
Bye.